Hi there, I'm Belinda Lee, and this is Step Into Me, the podcast about transformation and personal growth, embracing the quiet knowing deep in your heart, and finding the courage to step into your true self. On today's episode, we're going to meet Marianna Clark, founder and director of Travel Within Retreats. Marianna is going to talk to us about self-love, not only how we need to push through the uncomfortableness of putting ourselves first, but also how making ourselves a priority can have a positive impact on those around us. This episode is about leaning into discomfort and the path to self-love. What if the most loving thing you could do for yourself and for everyone around you was to be still and listen to the quiet voice within? Not the chatter in your head, but the quiet knowing in your heart, the one that whispers for rest when the world demands your attention, the one that nudges you toward truth when old habits urge you to please others, and the one that tells you it's time to put yourself first, even if doing so feels uncomfortable.
My journey with self-love has been one that it feels continuous and feels like I'm consistently learning about self-love. It's not like, oh, I figured self-love out. It teaches me what is self-loving within this moment in time. So what I perhaps thought was self-loving a few years ago looks different than what it is now.
Marianna Clark has been an ardent student and practitioner of self-development for more than 20 years. She is certified in life and leadership coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy, and has helped countless people connect with their untapped potential in life, relationships, and career. Marianna grew up in a culture and faith where love meant putting herself last, and where being a good person was measured by sacrifice and selflessness. When a mentor encouraged Marianna to practice being selfish without judgment, she soon realized that those around her were benefiting too. Through the uncomfortableness of putting herself first, Marianna soon discovered she could give and receive love simultaneously.
The word love or self-love doesn't necessarily mean feeling good. Let's say if I was a people pleaser and I was being really kind to somebody just for the sake of being kind to someone or getting a certain result, like within my working environment, but I was, let's say, sacrificing my own needs within that type of dynamic or relationship. It looks like I'm doing the loving thing, doing my job in this way, or pleasing the boss or pleasing the company and pleasing the structure of my life, so to speak, and the way that I've set it up to be a good citizen or a good employee or whatever it is. But at the same time, perhaps I'm sacrificing my own self-care or my personal needs or, work-life balance or things that are going to bring me joy or health or any of those things. So I've learned that even though it looks like on the outside that I'm doing something loving, I might not be actually giving myself the love that my body, mind, and soul and heart are calling for. In that case, if I'm aligned with that and it's really saying, hey, you need to make some changes in order to balance those things out in your life, then I might have to step into a level of discomfort. So that's not necessarily fun and, feeling so loving when you have to make decisions like that that don't necessarily feel good. But if we just lean into them and we take those risks and we do something that might feel uncomfortable, in the end, it replenishes us and it does feel very loving. But it's not always going to feel that way at first.
Well, this is where it gets tricky, isn't it? Moving from being selfless to what for most of us feels like being selfish. How do we get to that place of self-love?
Well, I love that question. And I can tell you, I am the best example of that whole selfless, self versus selfishness dynamic because I come from a cultural background that operates on taking care of other people. So I come from a Greek background and I grew up also in the Greek Orthodox Church. And so that part of the conditioning of those two areas in my life were really all about almost being a martyr to everything around you and people around you. So that was huge for me and really difficult for me to break because, in my mind, being a good person had everything to do with putting myself last, not only from a familial perspective in the family, but also from a religious standpoint. I'm going to get some really good brownie points in heaven for being this selfless. So this was wired into my system as a very heavy belief. And it's still something that I have to be careful with and be conscious of and self aware of. Luckily, I had a mentor who really was fantastic at pointing this out for me. And then so that started that process. And one of the things he said to me, he said, Mariana, be completely selfish. Spend a whole day, a whole week, a couple weeks walking around the house, feeling like you just do everything for yourself. And it's going to feel horrible, he says, for a little while, because I'm going to feel like I'm actually doing something bad.
Mm.
So he helped me to break through it by doing movement. And this is what I help do with a lot of women in the retreats and also in the one-to-one coaching. But I help them move through it by actually embodying the thing that they're afraid of, but it's the thing that will get them to the other side. So if I'm thinking that selfishness is bad, so I won't even allow myself to receive anything, then one of the ways to meet that energy is by actually allowing yourself to feel selfish and have it be okay. You're not going to go to hell for it, or nobody's going to die, because you didn't feed someone, and that story. So because to the mind it feels very dangerous
Mm.
to do that, because there is this feeling like the part of you is going to die, and it's the behavior that's
Mm.
really
Mm.
going to die. What people classically call the ego death. Part of your ego is at the stake of dying. And to lean into it. So, what is a way to lean into it? Is through just feeling selfish, just allowing it to be without the judgment.
So this is obviously the part where it gets uncomfortable, isn't it? I mean, how do we, as you say, lean into it? How do we work through that feeling that putting ourselves first is selfish or somehow bad? Because it just feels like a dirty word, doesn't it? I mean, no one wants to be thought of as selfish.
Yeah. Yeah. I find myself that the more and more I'm okay with being uncomfortable and allow myself to actually feel it, because a lot of times that uncomfortableness or that perception that we might feel a sense of pain, or even like family dynamics where you feel like you want to keep this quote unquote loving relationship, but again, at the sacrifice of yourself. But you don't want to necessarily do anything to upset your mom because they're your mom or your sister or whatever. But when you know deep down in your heart that it is the most loving thing for yourself, and ironically, when you do make that decision to take action and to say things and to come from a place where you're putting yourself first in that way, they actually end up benefiting in the long run. It might cause like a little bit of disruption at first because they're used to this type of dynamic. But then when you actually stand up for yourself in a place of self love, you actually give them the opportunity to do the same.
Mm.
And that is actually the most loving thing you can do simultaneously for yourself and for them, because you become an example of taking action from self love, being in a state of self love. And that ends up getting generated into your environment and it comes back to you. And that uncomfortability usually stops us from taking that self love action. And then we get stuck in this pattern with people, with life, with work, with everything that keeps us in that place because we're afraid to meet that little bit of resistance, or sometimes a lot of bit of
Mm. Mm.
resistance, right?
Mm.
And if you do it enough times and you go past the fear and you go past the uncertainty, what's on the other side is love. So then you learn to treat the uncomfortability or the resistance with a lot more compassion and a lot more enthusiasm to some degree. Like I look at some of my resistances now and uncomfortabilities as, oh gosh, this is an opportunity for me to experience more self-love. And so then I don't shy away from it. I lean into it a little bit and pierce through the other side. And then it ends up, oh my gosh, it ends up being so beneficial for everyone around. And there are times when you will go into that place where you may lose something. That loss is actually the thing that creates more room, again, to bring in more self love and more people that align with you, healthier relationships, healthier working opportunities, more money, even.
So if we're practicing being selfish and it's not feeling very good, so that's not feeling very loving, how do we then push through that? How does that practice of being selfish ultimately lead to self-love?
Well, what happens eventually is when you allow yourself to go into the thing that you judged as negative or bad, the i.e., the selfishness, and you just fully allow it to be there without the judgment, then what starts happening is that you merge the two things, like the giving and the receiving actually becomes one. So then the idea, the concept of selfishness actually starts to dissolve. So you're actually not being selfish, you're receiving and you're giving at the same time, but you're giving from a pure place, not from a conditioned place of like, oh, I'm giving in order to get something. And that's the irony is that when we actually go into the thing, we're afraid that, oh my gosh, I'm going to become selfish. I'm going to become a bad person. But what happens is you actually penetrate the idea of being selfish or the negativity about selfish, and it becomes, like I said, something different. It becomes a way to receive. I no longer say that I'm selfish. I'm just able to receive more. I'm receiving more of my heart's desires.
Mm,
Self love is all about receiving love.
mm.
And guess what? When the more love you have, the more it's just like you want to share it with other people. This is what, again, I was saying, the benefit that everybody else receives when you're filling your cup all the time. It's inevitable that they're going to feel it, even just energetically, just with the person walking down the
Mm.
street, let alone somebody you're having a conversation with or your family, friends, everybody, your colleagues, because you're in that state and you're not depleting yourself. So, usually, the thing is that when people are coming from a depleted cup and not giving themselves the self love, then they're trying to get it externally from somebody else.
Mm.
And that's where problems in relationships occur. I'm not fulfilled, so I'm going to try to get it from you. Or I'm going to try to squash somebody outside that looks like they have their cup full. So then you get into these interesting dynamics because of that. So this is how important the self-love is, to continually go to places within yourself to replenish that.
Well, since 2019, Marianna has been hosting Travel Within retreats, guiding women to breathtaking destinations like Kenya, Greece, Spain, and Egypt. These retreats offer more than just a change of scenery. They invite participants to embark on an inner journey. Drawing on her training as a RADA graduate, Marianna weaves elements of theatre and movement into her work. And through these immersive experiences, she empowers women to embrace self-love and step confidently into their own lives.
One of the ways that I do it in the retreats and help women break through it, and how I've helped to break through it, is to go into the feeling of the thing we're afraid of, which is, i.e., the selfishness. And then I like to physicalize it. So I use a little bit in the retreats, some physical theater. So, what does selfishness look like? So, one time my mentor said, selfishness looks like this, like grabbing things from other people,
Yeah.
So, I help to physicalize it just to get into the feeling and embody it more,
Mm.
because then it starts to energetically move through your body and out of your body. and it becomes again like this vessel of receiving. And that's where the transformation happens. That happens on a really somatic level because the wiring in our bodies, it's not just a head thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to be giving one day, or I'm going to do love now. It's that only stays up here. We want it to get circulating and recalibrating your whole energy, your whole body, your whole energetic field that's plugged into this external quantum field out here that is constantly reflecting to you back where you're at, who you are, your unconscious beliefs, your subconscious beliefs, and your conscious beliefs. So when that happens and you start turning it into love and self-love and receiving it more, and it starts circulating, then it starts coming back to you naturally and organically from your entire environment. So the movement is one of the ways that we do it. And then also another tool that I use is the writing bit. So we can actually see some of the stories. So if we do free writing, which is writing without stopping, we might get some stories around, well, the judgments, right? I don't want to be selfish because I'm bad, or I'm going to go to a special place in hell, or the things that actually keep us from going into that receptive place is another way that we can do it. So we then get to see it coming out of our heads or sometimes in the very back of our heads. So it's just running automatically, blindly somewhere in the background. And we get to have it come through on paper, and then we get to see it. And we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I see that that's actually what I'm doing. And that's how it's playing out in my life. And then we start seeing, oh gosh, the correlation was like, God, that's how my mom used to do that. And then my dad was reacting to that in this way. And wow, isn't that fascinating? That one behavior and how it played out in my family or in my environment. That's wonderful for our conscious minds to then put the puzzle pieces together in that sense. Because when we do that, we can become more self aware when those things do happen. It's like, oh, wow, there's that pattern that came out in that writing that's attached to this behavior of me not wanting to be selfish and giving a lot. So those are some of the tools that I help women to break through some of the, real stuck behaviors.
Does forgiveness play a role in all of this? Because just listening to what you're saying and moving through the discomfort of putting ourselves first, I feel, for me at least, I would need to either forgive myself or maybe forgive others for that past behaviour or the expectation or belief that I needed to put myself last. So does forgiveness help us let go of that mindset and move into that place of self-love?
Ooh, forgiveness. Well, it's interesting to introspect on that a little bit because I just see how much forgiveness is closely related to letting go of the self judgment of not only ourselves, but in other people. And that's the most self loving thing you can do. Like let's say I'll just use the martyring thing. It's like I could be mad at my culture or my parents for teaching me that, and that wasn't helpful in my life or something like that, or my religion. But it's like that anger is still tied to the judgment, and that's what just keeps it there, and that keeps the cycle just going. So the forgiveness is part of actually letting go and moving on and creating something new. So when we actually see it and then able to move through it to the other side, I've found that because I feel so good on from seeing it objectively and am able to move the energy, what comes through is compassion. I see the gift in it in a way. So seeing the gift in what that particular thing was, even if it caused me a certain level of pain or sadness or anxiety or tension or resistance in my life, being able to let go of the judgment is part of the forgiveness, and that being a pathway towards self-love. It really is a bridge. Forgiving and having compassion for perhaps like your family who also went through the stage of getting passed on certain concepts of how to live or be that they just thought they were doing the loving thing by passing it on to you. And so when we look at it that way, it just feels so much easier to forgive because we really see it objectively. Even though it might have been actually loving or looked loving or certainly felt loving in that way, that they were doing their perception of love. Because that, in essence, that's true, even if it looks like intentionally destructive or intentionally mean or something like that. They're unconscious of that. So the forgiveness piece for me is huge and being able to then receive greater love. And that has a lot to do with, like I said, the judgment. At the end of the day, if you want to experience love, then you're going to have to let go.
And how do we cope with the person who doesn't like this new version of ourselves? I mean, if we're saying no when in the past we've said yes, and we're putting ourselves first, standing in our truth, and, a family member, and family members can be very honest sometimes, or friends, they might call us selfish or voice their displeasure in the newfound confidence or assertiveness that we've given ourselves permission to put ourselves first. How do we get around that?
That's when you really get objective. So when you move through a lot of your stuff and you're no longer at the effect of the story that I'm that and I'm wrong, for being that this way in some way, then what happens is you see the compassion and go, wow, that person who's making even that comment, you can see that it's tied to their own insecurity. It's you're taking your power back, basically.
Oh,
Because
totally.
when you do it, when you let other people's voices become your own, then you're a victim. That's why I think the self-care bit is a form of self-love too. It's like, well, what puts me in the best place possible for me? Like, how do I nurture myself on such a deep level that my mind is focused enough to be clear so I don't allow just all these voices to just have a rant up there and I get dizzy and depressed. So how do I do something in my self-care daily program where I spend time to just be in the stillness and clear my mind and do some yoga or some movement practices?
Would you say it's about setting boundaries?
I have an interesting thing with the boundaries thing because a lot of the times we can set boundaries and they become walls.
Yeah, that's true.
And then energetically, we invite like a form of attack to break down the wall externally. So, one of the ways that I like to look at it is your self love becomes a generating frequency inside you that's so strong that you don't even need the walls
No,
anymore.
it's like a force field.
It is, it's a
Yeah.
force field instead of the walls, you
Yeah,
know?
I like that.
So, yeah, it's really quite beautiful because then whatever energy comes to you, you're able to recycle it and allow it to move through you versus sitting there and defending the world. So that takes up so much of your energy. Try to like put boundaries and walls up to protect yourself when instead you can be self generating this love force inside of you that also attracts beautiful loving things to you instead of things that are where you're ready to defend for attack.
It's like a superpower, isn't it? It's like being a superhero, and this is
It
my
is.
superpower.
It is.
I love it.
It is absolutely being a superhero. We all have the capacity to turn that on and be superheroes and really thrive in that place physically, emotionally, and energetically.
So, what advice would you have for the person who's listening to this podcast who's really struggling with self love, maybe afraid of taking that first step into putting themselves first? What would you say to them?
I would say the first thing is if you can find a little bit of time every single day to be still and clear your mind, especially first thing in the morning. Because first thing in the morning is how we kind of wire ourselves with our brains and in our energy body. We set it up for the rest of the day. And if there is a way to not check your phone first thing, Because a lot of times when we check our phones or we go into that space, we're in a reactive mode. So we're not even tapped into listening to ourselves. We're turning on the brain in a way that's reactive to the world state of affairs, to our emails, to our bosses, to this and that. So it's another way of handing over our power.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing that people can do is just after waking, having a little bit of a ritual, like making your tea or your whatever you drink in the morning, and just be still and quiet and meditate for, if you can, at least 15 minutes in the day, just to set the tone for the rest of the day. And the other thing is, I'd say, if stuff does come up throughout the day, to really take notice it and not start defending it or just having it play out in the background or try to squash it in some way, but just maybe take a pause and feel the feeling and allow it to move through you without judgment, and go into that place of forgiveness as a practice, because that's what's going to start softening that dynamic or resistance or the thing that you might have an issue with, whatever it is that's personal to you. Because the more we start to just stop and allow it to move through us and let go, the less and less it will have a hold on us. And that's another way of replenishing. So using certain things that might be triggering as opportunities to change the dynamic is a way that we can regenerate a form of self-love.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Marianna, it's been so good chatting with you. We've spoken in the past on the radio show in the UK, of course, but I love that you've been able to join me for the first edition of Step Into Me.
Yay. Yes, it's been so fun, and it's always amazing to have conversations with you.
And if you'd like to know more about Marianna's Travel Within Retreats, you can check out her website at travelwithinretreats.com. Well, I think one of the great lessons from today's show, and it's something you may have heard before, but it's always good to be reminded, and that is that when you fill your own cup, you've got more to give, and it's inevitable that everyone around you will feel it too. So in many ways, the uncomfortableness of being selfish really is worth it in the long run. It's something to ponder over the coming week. If you were to honour that quiet voice inside and do even just one little tiny thing for yourself this week, if you were to put yourself first just for a day, just for an hour, what would you do? Thank you so much for joining us for the very first episode of Step Into Me. If you'd like to share your own journey or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. Send your comments to mail@stepintomepodcast.com, or you can leave a comment or review on your favourite podcast platform. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow Step Into Me and leave a 5-star review, because it really makes a difference and ensures you won't miss what's coming next. Speaking of which, in our next episode, you will meet David, who seemed to have it all: a successful career, marriage and kids. But the life he'd built and the expectations he carried nearly broke him. We'll learn how he found the courage to step into his true self. Thank you again for listening. I'm Belinda Lee. Until next time, be sure to keep stepping in the direction of you.